Cameras are ready.
All right.
Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
I am recording.
All right. Before you say anything, I want to say that I am extremely proud of you. And it is an honor and a privilege to sit here in this chair across from you, and you actually interview me. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you. Love you.
You've achieved a lot in a really, really short span of time. And I hope the interview today will encourage everyone that listens to it to step out a little bit further.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that I think you're like one of my biggest inspirations. Like, you're someone that I really look up to. And so I feel like I get a lot of my attributes from you because you're a go-getter and you go for it. And I feel like I get that from you. So
Well, I appreciate that.
you're like a legend.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Season 2 of the Dare to Love podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Holloway, and you are watching Beauty from Ashes, where I have guests on to share how God brought them out of a terrible situation and turned it into something beautiful. Today's very special guest is my dad, Joey Holloway, and he's going to be sharing about how God was faithful to him through the highs and lows of owning his own business. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Okay, so Dad, just tell me like a little bit about, obviously I know, but you can tell the audience about kind of how you grew up and what made you want to become a businessman and kind of what got you going to church and kind of like just the start of your story.
Well, I think early on in my Christian walk, it started around 8 years old. I was spending the weekend with Grandmama, and she had Ernest Angeli on, and he was preaching on hell, and it just absolutely terrified me. And I guess that's the old term that, I got the hell scared out of me. And that next morning we went to church and I asked Christ into my heart. And I can remember the very next Sunday was water baptized. And I don't know that I knew all the gist of it, but that was an experience I'll never forget. As I grew older, I kind of lived the life that I thought that every teenager would live. I didn't go to church. I guess I had the understanding that once you're saved, you're always saved, and that's not necessarily always true. The great thing about Christianity is a relationship, and it's not just a religion. So I knew that I had God on my side, but I did what I wanted to do. And of course, in that I kept myself in trouble. And then I would go and pray and say, God, I'll do this if you do that and get me out of this. And so I always knew it was there. And at the same time, as I grew up, I always knew it wasn't really a knowing. It was more of a feeling that I would be somewhat successful. And I think that's what I'm still trying to achieve is the success, even though a lot of people would look at me and go, wow, I wished I had what you have. But I don't think that I've finished the call that he has on my life. And I knew that a long time ago. I think everybody has that. They know that there's something there. They search, and sometimes they search in the wrong directions.
Yeah. So how did you get the idea to start your business, and like what kind of started that whole journey for you?
Well, I think before we really get there, let me do a little bit of backup. My teenage years, as I mentioned before, I was always in trouble. And I got in some real bad legal trouble and got grounded. Couldn't leave the house for 3 months. And at that time, I had already, if I wanted anything, I didn't get an allowance, so I had to really work for it. And so I had a neighbor that always cut his grass, and I washed his cars. And he didn't see me for a couple of weeks. He comes knocking on the door saying, Joey, where you at? And I said, Henry, I'm sorry, I'm grounded. And he talked my parents into letting me go to work with him over the summers. And him being a businessman instilled in me some practical things like always treat people the way you want to be treated, your customers. If you make one guy mad, he's going to tell 30 people, but if you make the same guy mad, happy, he's only going to tell 3. So everything's already against you as business goes. So as time goes on, I go to work for a parts store that made hoses, and this gentleman came in and was complaining about how long it took to get there and get his hose made and then go back, and it just kind of dawned on me, if I make the hose on site, would you call me? He says, yeah. And that kind of started that process of getting everything together. It was challenging then, but I could see where God's hand was in it all along.
Yeah. So what about those first couple of years being in business? Like they say, if you can make it past 7 years, like you're good.
Well, I've always heard the 5 year, the first 2 years is the worst, but if you make it past 5, you got it licked. And I started in 1989, and in 1991, me and your mom got married, and shortly after that, I lost a major account, and I thought the world's going to come to an end. And I had did some things that the customer wanted me to do that I really didn't want to do, but I did them because he was a good accountant. And what I told him would do happened, and then they fired me. And the only person I knew to call was Grandmama. And she called. I called her, and she's like, I can still hear her kind of giggle in the background, and here I'm crying, trying to figure out, why are you laughing? And she goes, Joey, God's just trying to get your attention. He's just trying to get your attention. I was like, well, he's got it, And so she came up, spent the weekend with us. She took us to her old pastor, and we traveled from Auburn, Georgia, to Woodstock, Georgia, which is about an hour and 15-minute drive. We did that every morning and every evening for about a year and a half. And in that time, we grew so much in the Lord, not only in knowledge, but also the relationship. Even though I had an 8-year-old experience, I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I knew it was there, but I didn't know him. And after that one experience, he grabbed a hold of me.
Yeah. How did having a relationship with God affect how you ran your company?
The golden rule. Again, I was always prompted, you treat people fairly, but the golden rule, you treat them the way you want to be treated. I think all in all, with the relationship that I have with Christ, is knowing that I have to answer for what I do while I'm here. You mistreat somebody, we're going to have to answer for that one day. And so that terrifies me, knowing that I might cheat somebody out of, $100 on their payroll. Well, that's going to come back. And people today don't relate that. The grace will cover it. Yeah, I'm still going to make it to heaven, but there's some things I'm sure I'm going to have to answer for, but nothing intentionally.
Yeah. So you've been in business since 1989. So that means that you went through the economic crisis and you've gone through like a lot of different challenges being in owning your own business. So if you don't mind sharing a couple of those.
Sure. Well, like I said before, the very first one where God really grabbed a hold of me, about a year and a half after that, we was able to pick that account back up, and matter of fact, still service that account. I think that all through the walk that I've had as a business person, I look back at that particular instance now, and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it was really just one account.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that was the whole business. And as we moved forward, about 5 years after we first started, I purchased a second truck. A couple of years after that, I purchased a third truck, with the mobile service that we have. And then 2008 hit, and we had 12 employees. And I'll never forget the payroll going out and all the material, paying for all of that, and fuel, banknotes, and there was no money coming in. It really just came to a dead stop. The only comfort that I had was everybody was in it. Everybody was dealing with the same thing and just really didn't know what to do. So I just started laying people off. And it came all the way down to me and one other guy, which still works for me, Scott. And we just hunkered down, winded up having to go to all my lenders and saying, I can't pay this note. How do you want to do it? I had one banker say, what can you pay? And I said, I might be able to pay the interest. And he said, well, if you could pay the interest and double it, then I think I can rewrite the note. And at that time, we had financial advisors saying, you just throw in the towel, just hang it up. There's no way that you can make it. Everybody else is doing it. You'll be okay. Just file for bankruptcy. And I can distinctly remember thinking, I can't do that. I signed my name on the bottom of that piece of paper, giving my word that I would honor what I'm borrowing. And with that, I can still see God's hand kind of moving, because the credit card people allowed me to pay what I could pay. The banks allowed me to pay what I could pay. And we got past that initial recession portion and I can still think of the sleepless nights that I had trying to figure out how we were going to, just make ends meet on it. It was a real trying time.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it. I think I was like 10 or 11 when it was like 08, 09. And I can't remember, and I could be remembering a different time, but I'm pretty sure this is it. But during the summers and stuff, when it was just you and Scott, and me and my older sister this is my dad's building that we're filming in. So like he's allowing us to use the space to film in, but the sales counter is like to my left. And I remember when y'all would have to go do road calls, me and Elizabeth would sit back there. And if customers came in, we would say like, oh, if you leave your hose here and your name and number, like write your name and number down. And then when y'all got back, you would make them and call them and let them know it was ready. But we would sit back there and like do the sales counter for you. And we were like 10 and 13 years old, running your sales counter. But I also remember like we used to eat out a lot, and then like all of a sudden we didn't, like mom would cook all the time. But I don't really feel like, other than that aspect of it, I don't really feel like we felt the pressure at that time of what you were going through economically. Like we didn't feel like we were not going to eat, or like, I never grew up feeling that way. So I think you guys did a good job of kind of shielding us from the problems you were going through. And we were probably like brats about it too. Like, why can't we go out to eat? But I remember that season. And then later on, I don't know if you want to say anything else about 0809, but later on in 2012 was a little bit more, I think I was older, so I understood a little bit more of what was going on too. But if you want to share about that.
Yeah. The 0809, I think, kind of prepared me for 2012. Again, I think God allows things to happen in our life to kind of strengthen us, when we least expect where we need to be strengthened at. And 2012 came in, and the sales counter you're talking about, we were still, 1, 2, 3 employees. We were still trying to come out of that recovery portion and really didn't have the money. And because of the latter years of 07 and 08 and 09, we kind of got fairly behind on some taxes, payroll taxes we got behind on, sales tax we got behind paying. We were collecting it, but wasn't really paying it. And I can remember back then it was really stealing from Peter to pay Paul. I would take money that I knew that I had to pay for material over here and say, well, that I can push that off for another week. I need to pay this first. And it was just a constant. And now you can't really do it. But before, you used to race the bank. You could write a check, pay for something, and it'd give you 2 or 3 days before you have to worry about the money was in the bank. Now it's instantaneous. If you write a check, you better have the money in the bank. But that was one of the techniques that we would do, is we would write the check knowing we didn't have the money, knowing that some was coming in. And so it was just delay in the process. And we just severely got behind on taxes. And a lady came in the office, the sales counter, and it was all official that she had the name tags, the state of Georgia vehicle come pulling up. And she said, she came walking in. She goes, I'm looking for Mr. Holloway. And I said, got it. And I'm thinking in my back of my head going, oh no, it's fixing to come down. And she unfolded a piece of paper and she looked, it was $2,000. And she goes, I see some sales tax that hasn't been paid back in 2006. And I looked at it and I said, $2,000. And I'm thinking, I owe a lot more than $2,000. And she goes, do you think you can pay this? And I said, yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think I've got enough money to pay that. So she goes, all right, I want to leave this with you. If you can cut a check and mail it to us, that'd be great. And I said, okay. And that's when the sleepless nights started, because they found me. And I tossed and turned with that for I don't know how long. And about 6 weeks later, she came back, and the piece of paper she had this time was much thicker. And I knew it was coming. And she goes, what about these? And during that sleepless times, I need to give your mom credit. She put up with a lot. You had just started playing softball, and I can remember going to the field to watch you play. I don't remember any of it. I do not remember a bit of it. I just remember being at the ballpark, and I remember being gripped with so much fear, because, you deal with the state. They won't just garnish your wage. They'll take everything you got. They'll come and change the locks on the buildings. And I told Scott, I said, now, if I text you something really weird, so you don't bring that truck around me. You keep that truck away. That's the only way we're going to be making ends meet. And he was like, what's up? And I told him, I said, I got behind on some taxes. And he was like, oh, okay. And at that time, the news was going after everybody. All these people that was paying sales tax. The state was just going after them, locking them up. And I think the pressure of it, your mom got sick. She had kidney stones. She was in a great deal of pain. And I took her to the Gwinnett Medical. And she was in the emergency room, and I told her, I think you may have to get a job. I was so consumed with how are we going to get out of this? How in the world are we going to prevent the state from taking everything I've worked so hard for? And at that time, it was 20 years. And it was an extremely trying time for me. And I look back now in all of that, and I could see where God was in the middle of it. You know, you never see it when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came back, the lady from the tax department or the Georgia State Revenue, and she asked me, she goes, what happened here? And I remember distinctly my left hand, I said, payroll, sales tax. I mean, the payroll, mortgage, material, fuel for the trucks, the payments for the trucks. And I looked at my right hand and I said, sales tax. And I said, ma'am, this hand got paid before this hand. And she looked at me and she smiled. She goes, I can work with you. Which told me that I didn't try to lie my way out of it. I didn't try to give any false excuses or anything. I was just truthful with her. And I do believe that because of that one step, God saw me through that. And that's all we have to be, is truthful and know who he is, and that he'll get us through it. Mm-hmm. So we set up a payment plan, and fortunately, about 3 years later, that was paid for. And now we're, from the knowledge of all of that and seeing God work, we are much better off, being able to financially much stronger now than we were in 08, 09. And I'll never see myself in that position again.
Yeah. I remember like 2012, I remember talk of us having to sell our house, that you like, and that was stressful. I think that when I mean like, y'all still hid a lot from us as far as like the stress level, but I remember being like kind of scared that I was going to have to move schools, you know, and kind of like, I don't know, not embarrassed, but I didn't want to tell anybody. I was like, no one can know that like my family's having a hard time right now, you know? And so I remember like telling one person, and I was like, you can't tell anybody, like you have to like keep it a secret because I don't want anybody knowing. But I remember being like kind of scared that we were going to have to, and we actually like packed our whole house basically. So like none of our stuff was out because it was just always ready to show, like a potential mover or potential buyer. So like none of my toys like were out, like nothing like that I enjoyed like was out of our house because it was all packed up in boxes and stuff. But I don't remember it lasting very long, maybe a couple months, and then we figured it out. But I wanted you to share kind of what you learned specifically in that experience.
I've kind of been holding off on that.
Oh, okay.
I can remember, because I had all of these businessmen, all these financial advisors, you know, I'd go to them, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And instead of really turning to God and really praying about it, saying, God, you know what, help me, lead me, guide me, show me what I need to do. I was listening to everybody, and everybody was saying, pack your bags. And that's essentially what we did. We packed our bags. And even my CPA was like, "This, you know, you're not going to make this. You know, your credit's still good. Go rent your house and let all this go back. Just let it go back." And again, what kept ringing was, I signed my name to this. I can't just leave it alone. And I can remember praying. I said, Lord, I was crying. Oh man, I was crying. I said, Lord, I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do, where to go. And he reminded me of Ephesians 6. He says, put on the full armor of God. And I think most of us know that. Helmet of salvation, a breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the sword, that's the word of God, and shoes of readiness, gird yourself up, the belt of truth. And I had the truth with me. I've been trying to practice this all my life, or at least since 1991. And he said, what's guarding your back? What do you mean what's guarding my back? He goes, go over the armor again. So I did all the armor, and he goes, breastplate you got the shield, you got the sword. If you turn, what's going to happen? And it dawned on me, when we run from our fears, run from everything that we think will attack us, we leave ourselves vulnerable. There's nothing guarding there's nothing shielding our back. And then the very next scripture that came to mind was, stand still and see the salvation of God. And after that point, I knew, okay, we got this. And I didn't go talk to anybody else other than the banks. I didn't ask opinions from anybody. We went day to day. I didn't try to hurry it. I didn't try to slow it down. I said, God, this is all yours. If you want us to be successful, we'll be successful. And that was the real turning point for me, fighting fear, and making the business grow. There's a lot more to that, but now when I run into a situation that is gripping, I instantly think of that scripture. Put on the armor, in which we should be doing every day anyway, but we can't run.
Yeah. So I specifically asked him to share that part because I remember you telling us that when we were younger, and it's always stuck with me too. Whenever I face something, I'm like, okay, yeah. And I remember what God's spoken to you. And so it's I really wanted him to share that on the show. But so after 2012, obviously there were other issues that you might have ran into, but how are things now? I know you said that financially we're just more wise now because we did go through the hardships that we did. So what is it today compared to 2012 and 2008, 2009?
Well, I think that growth that I had, I've always, like I said earlier, I've always known that I would be successful in some form or fashion, maybe not monetarily, but I knew that I'd always be successful. We went through seminary. I got my pastor's license and went through starting a church. You remember the church we had in Lawrenceville, and we did all that, and it just stuck in the mud. We were just never really got anywhere, and I couldn't figure out. I was like, God, I want to serve you in every capacity. And he, in that period of time, he goes, you are serving me. And I said, how? I'm not successful being a pastor. And he goes, well, you're not a pastor. And I'm like, well, how else am I going to serve you if I can't pastor a church? And I think this is where a lot of believers get stumbled up. We feel like that we have to have this church title to serve the Lord, and that's not the case. He told me very specifically, he goes, you're doing what you're called to do. And I'm like, okay, what is that? He goes, you're running a business. And he goes, I need businesses to help financially the people that can help people that you want to help. And we me and your mom prayed about it, and we really have a heart for, and it actually says it in James. If you really, really want to show your religion, is you take care of the widow and the fatherless. And so those are the organizations that we really try to support. And by being truthful, and when we made it through 08, 09, and then 2012, we committed ourselves that we give a certain amount of money to these organizations around the state of Georgia. And our business has prospered because of that. I fully believe that. Now, this isn't a name it, claim it, or anything like that. You really have to be obedient to what he's calling you to do. And because of that, we've expanded. And I can remember we opened that store in Covington, and it was just a little place. And even if it wasn't successful, it wouldn't have been a real financial burden. But for me, it wasn't about the financial. It was more about the image, because of what I feel like I'm trying to have the company represent Christ, and our banner is so high. I have the standard that's higher than most companies, and that failure would have showed me that maybe I'm going beyond what God wants me to really do. And I can remember being scared, and you even said, "Well, Dad, you're doing something you've never done before." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And you said, "You have a reason to be fearful, but just remember." And because you said just remember, reminded me of 12, and was able to get past that, and very successful now. We're actually moving in the next couple of weeks, and with a larger facility than this one, and still growing leaps and bounds. And I think that true commitment to serving our community financially is reaching more people than I would ever reach behind a pulpit. And if everybody would truly figure out that you don't have to be behind the pulpit to serve Christ. And it took a long time for me. It probably took 20 years for me to really sit down and figure that out.
Yeah.
And how much more successful would it have been if I hadn't had such a hard head in trying to please my Lord by doing what I think he wants me to do instead of asking him what he wants me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that way too. Like, I went to Bible college. So when I quit my job at the church, I felt like, well, God will never be able to use me again because I don't work at like a brick and mortar church, and I feel like doing this podcast I feel like I am walking in the calling that he's given me, and it's using the experience and the knowledge that I learned in Bible college, but applying it to something that's not your typical Sunday service style ministry, and I enjoy it a lot more than I did working at brick and mortar church too. So I definitely feel like me and you, I feel like go through very similar things at the same time. That happens a lot. Like whenever you're going through a trial or something, like I'm going through something, and like we have to bounce ideas off each other sometimes. But so I find that kind of interesting, like bonds us kind of. But last question, I just wanted to see if you could, if anybody out there is watching that either owns a business or lost their business, COVID just happened. So a lot of people lost their business, or it's still happening, but a lot of people lost their jobs, lost their livelihoods, so if there's any advice or encouragement you could give to somebody out there that might be going through something similar, what would you say?
Seek him. Don't go around asking opinions of everybody. You seek him. Follow your heart. follow your dreams. Psalm tells us that if you seek him, he'll give you the desires of your heart. Well, as you're seeking him, he's placing those desires in your heart. So then, because those are his desires that are in your heart, you will ultimately get your desires because you're seeking him. I think so many times we get it so muddied up trying to do things that, like I said earlier, do things that we think that he wants us to do. Just spend time with him. He'll pull you through it. You may not like it, but if you're his, he's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
He will take care of you. This is, if I ask you this question, you're probably going to be able to answer it. At least I hope you can answer it.
Put pressure on me.
What is another word for faith?
Trust.
Trust.
Okay, thank God I got that right. I was scared.
I mean, think about, I'm daddy, I'm in a pool, you're up on the ledge, and I'm saying, jump, I'll catch you. Just trust me. Well, oftentimes we have to jump, and we have to have trust in Christ. He's going to catch us when we jump.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have to have a little bit of brains to it too. I'm always reminded, and I don't know how many fans we have of Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones with the goblet.
Mm-hmm.
And
Last Crusade.
Is it the Last Crusade? And Harrison Ford's fixing to go into the little cave where all the goblets are, but there's this cavern in between, and so he's reciting this word and so he just kind of closes his eyes and puts his foot out, and there's a ledge for him to stand on. And by his perspective, the ledge is not there. But if you go on the other side, you can see the ledge. And there's so many times that our perspective, we don't see that God's there to catch us. But if we get on his side, we'll see that ledge. And that personal relationship with him will always pull us through it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dad, for coming on the show today. And I just want to say that I'm thankful that you let us basically set up shop here for the last several weeks. And I think, like, when you're saying that God bless you from giving financially, like, I think he'll also bless you because you let us use your space for filming all of these. And that's what we prayed for on the very first day that we set up, that God would bless Mobile Hydraulics because you allowed us to take up your office space. Well,
I find it an honor, not only to support you, but I know there's a lot of kind of interns here that are learning and trying to grow a business as well, and pursue it. Pursue everything that y'all are looking for. And remember, if you're pursuing him, he's putting those desires there. Follow those desires.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Dare to Love podcast. I hope it blessed you and challenged you. Make sure you visit the description below for all our helpful links. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new content from us. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook so you can stay updated with everything we have going on. And we'll see you next week for an all-new episode of the Dare to Love podcast.